From KAMR Local 4 News, your local election headquarters. This is Politics Today with Jackie Kingston.
The investigation into Hemphill County Sheriff Nathan Lewis has ended, but we're just now learning why it began. We'll tell you what we uncovered. Joe Taco's new downtown location is causing some controversy caused by confusion. We'll separate fact from fiction when it comes to who's picking up the tab. Hi everyone, thanks for being here. Good Sunday morning to you. We start up in Hemphill County this morning. The investigation of their sheriff, Nathan Lewis, has closed. We learned this after sending Freedom of Information Act requests to the 31st District Attorney's Office and to the Department of Public Safety Texas Rangers Division. Responsive documents from DPS show Sheriff Lewis was being investigated on allegations of threatening a juvenile probation officer while in his official capacity over a recent case the officer was involved in. According to 31st District Attorney Franklin McDonough, the case was rejected for lack of probable cause and returned to the investigating agency. McDonough says there was insufficient evidence to prove probable cause at the offenses of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, tampering with a witness, or official oppression were committed by Lewis as alleged. McDonough says the district attorney's office can't proceed further without any new evidence. We did reach out to McDonough's office. He was not immediately available for comment. As we reported back in April, the Texas Rangers told us the investigation was not related to the Thomas Brown case. If you'd like to see all those responsive documents regarding the investigation, you can go to our website this morning, myhighplains.com. Another story we got a lot of questions about last week, and it bore out. Joe Taco will be opening a third location in downtown Amarillo. It's going to be right across the street from Hodgetown on the corner of Buchanan and 6th Street. Located in the retail space on the first floor of the city's parking garage. Now, and this is something that caused a lot of people to ask us questions because Panhandle Restaurant Group, the owner of Joe Taco, will be picking up the tab on the rest of the development costs. You can see it's unfinished right now. The city has agreed to not charge them rent for the first year.
They're making a huge investment up front to do the finish out on their own, so that's cash out of their pocket instead of the city having to come out with cash as the landlord to do those tenant improvements.
So Joe Taco isn't having to pay a base rent for the first year, but they are paying other fees and taxes, and finishing the construction on the inside of the building is expected to cost between $500,000 and $600,000. They plan to finish construction coming up in May of 2020. I want to bring in now Politics Today's Maggie Glenn to the conversation. You covered this story. Maggie, explain to us a little bit about this controversy. Where did this all start?
So you can actually even see this on our Facebook page. Actually, the minute we posted about Joe Taco opening this location, people were kind of angry because they got the sense that they were getting free rent for the first year. Technically, they won't be paying rent, but they're paying for it in other ways. So it's a 6-year lease, and so the first year they won't be paying a base rent, but they are going to be paying, you know, other taxes, and they are picking up the tab for the construction fees, which, as we just stated, it's going to be between $500,000 and $600,000. So over the 6 years, the rent is slowly going to be building up. So like by year 3, they're going to be paying $12 per square foot. But in addition to those extra, you know, taxes and extra costs, it's going to be closer to like $16.25 per square foot. So it might sound like they have free rent, but it's just not.
But it's really not, and that was the whole explanation that came from the mayor this week, and came from we talked to the
Coldwell Banker.
Yeah, Coldwell Banker, who were involved in this whole transaction, and that's what they decided. Another thing that's going to be cool, there's a patio involved, right?
Yes, there's going to be a patio. There's going to be the whole side of the building facing Buchanan Street is going to be garage doors. Cool. They're going to open those during Sod Poodles games and everything, so it's going to be really fun. New
development in downtown. Maggie, stay right there. I want to bring you in on this next story too. Amarillo College and the Amarillo Senior Citizens Association have reached an agreement regarding their relocation. More downtown news this morning. According to the agreement, ASCA will move off campus in a year when their new lease expires. ASCA has chosen to seek a new home location elsewhere. They are going to move rather than relocate to a different portion of AC's campus.
Early in September, Amarillo College offered them an alternative solution for some other space on our downtown campus, and they explored that and determined that they would pursue another alternative.
If ASCA is able to find a new home location before the end of the lease, the organization will not be held to that full year-long lease, and they can move whenever they're ready. Additionally, AC has agreed to help ASCA store its property if they do not find a place by September 30th. That, of course, 2020. Maggie Glenn covered the story extensively. This has been a long time coming. Tell us, where did this really start, and how's it progressed from there?
So the bond initially passed in May, and then I first initially covered the story when the Seniors Association had a meeting back in August, and they essentially had a meeting to take a vote that they were going to go to the board, and essentially they just wanted more time because what AC was proposing was an anchor space and then $500,000 to renovate that anchor space.
That was their original proposal.
Right. But the seniors were just kind of really unhappy with that because the space is significantly smaller than where they are right now. So they kind of didn't know what to do. They didn't have another place to go, so they just went to the board and asked for more time, and that's essentially what they're getting.
And it seems like this is a pretty good resolution for everyone involved. Amarillo College is going to renovate the downtown campus. They had that bond election for it. You mentioned it, that people approved, and so they're renovating that space, and the seniors get to find another space for them.
Yeah, definitely. Both sides seem to be pretty happy with this decision.
And they get to keep their pool tables and their quilting and all those programs that they were worried about, and hopefully grow their base. They were concerned about having space for new members too.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Politics Today's Maggie Glenn. Thank you for all your hard work and weighing in on those stories this morning. The Ag Commissioner from Texas is hoping to strengthen ties with Vietnam. Coming up, how he's becoming the head spokesman for a certain breed of cattle. I'm Jackie Kingston. You're watching Politics Today from your local election headquarters. A couple of stories now from one of our area's largest employers. Bell Helicopter has a new rotorcraft design that they're submitting to a prototype program for the U.S. Army. It's called the Bell 360 Invictus. Bell says it combines low-risk technologies with advanced processes to deliver soldiers an agile solution for the modern battlefield. The design is based on Bell's 525 Relentless rotor system. We're told that if Bell 360 Invictus is selected, Bell's Amarillo Assembly Center will build the U.S. Army's prototype, so keep an eye out for news on that front. The V-22 Osprey has hit a new milestone. The aircraft now flown more than 500,000 flight hours. Nearly 400 Ospreys helped to log those hours. They were first produced by Bell Helicopter and Boeing 30 years ago. Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller is headed to Vietnam on a trip to strengthen business ties with that country. He says the state's main export there is cattle DNA, specifically the genetic material from Brahman bulls to breed. Commissioner Miller talked with Politics Today's Wes Rappaport ahead of his Asia mission.
This is our storage area. All these tanks pretty much full.
They're full of future generations of cattle. The team at this Texas barn specializes in bovine reproduction.
Process it and freeze it and store it for them, and ultimately ship it to their buyers, either in the United States or in foreign countries.
Those foreign countries include Vietnam. Cattle raisers from around the world want these Brahman bulls to sire calves in their herds to bring a higher quality to their beef, and they pay Ava Barker to help. She's run her operation for more than 4 decades near Taylor, Texas, 30 miles east of Austin.
Those people in those countries endure hot weather like we do in Texas. And the Brahman and the Brahman cross are the most prolific in those countries. So there are purebred breeders down there that want to upgrade their herds.
I'm going over with a group from the USDA. We have been cultivating Vietnam for quite some time. We mainly sell them animal genetics.
As the state's agriculture commissioner heads on a week-long mission to Vietnam, he's hoping to expand the flow of cattle product there.
We already have cracked that market, but we're going to make sure that we continue to have a good relationship with them.
Barker is encouraged by the growing business ties between the two countries, especially exporting more bull genes to Vietnam.
The cattle they have are good cattle. They just need a boost, and the Brahman can do that.
The delegation will meet with agriculture industry representatives, tour one of the largest supermarket chains there in Vietnam, and visit the only fully automated cold storage facility in Asia. Aside from bull DNA, other Texas exports to Vietnam include small grain crops. Some education news for you this morning. Some school districts in Texas already flag what students post online, but some leaders say it can be hard to keep up. The Texas School Safety Center hosted a digital threat assessment workshop in Central Texas last week. Law enforcement officials, school safety directors, and IT experts got training on how to verify accounts and investigate suspicious words posted online.
The feedback we've gotten from the school district is they want more training more often, so it's going to be incumbent upon us to provide that training, because for the ever daily changes that there is in social media.
The Texas School Safety Center receives funding from the state of Texas to help with those trainings all across the Lone Star State. Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush having a, quote, conversation with the future. He did so last week at Sanborn Elementary. Commissioner Bush spoke with fourth grade students about the importance of our state's history. Students got to learn while they played with an interactive Texas history map.
At the beginning of the year, we decided as an agency to dedicate our operations to education here in Texas. The legislature made a historic investment in public education, K through 12. And we thought it was important, instead of just being a check writer to public ed in Texas, that we actually get out of the ivory tower and get into the classroom.
Commissioner Bush hopes that his lessons will inspire future leaders of Texas. He is a former school teacher himself, so not a surprise that he was right at home there in front of those kiddos. Talking now about the Congressional District 13, a woman from Wichita Falls has announced that she plans to run for that district. In September, Representative Thornberry announced that he would not be seeking re-election for that position. And now Monique Worthy says she plans to file to run for that spot. The deadline to file to run is December 9th. The United States and China continued negotiations last week in hopes of reaching a deal on trade. Coming up, we'll take a look at how likely a deal will be struck before the end of the year. Trade talks between the United States and China resumed in Washington last week. Negotiators are hopeful to strike a deal of some sort before the next tranches of tariffs on Chinese imports take effect. Politics Today's Washington correspondent Anna Warnicki reports a partial agreement is the most realistic outcome, but President Trump says he won't be satisfied with anything less than a big deal.
It's back to the negotiating table for the U.S. and China. Top trade negotiators for the two countries met on Thursday in Washington, hoping to defuse a 15-month-long trade war.
If you show China that you are a pushover, you will be pushed over.
Jeff Moon says the only way to win is to play tough. It wasn't long ago that Moon had his own seat at the table as a trade negotiator in the Obama administration.
However, just mere threats and insults are not enough, and insults are particularly counterproductive.
Moon says the U.S. and China need to focus on mending their rocky relationship, and fast.
Next week, the Trump administration is scheduled to increase the tariff rate on $250 billion worth of Chinese imports to 30%. Another set of tariffs are set to take effect in December.
These are core Trump voters that are going to be affected by this and harmed by this.
President Trump teased the trade talks Thursday morning on Twitter, saying, big day of negotiations with China. They want to make a deal, but do I?
I do think that the president is interested in a trade deal.
Riley Walters with the Heritage Foundation says the best case scenario is a skinny deal that pauses any talks of tariffs for now.
But these are still just pause in tariffs. And so what I'm hoping for is that, again, sometime next year, there's going to be a deal that removes all the tariffs.
The impeachment proceedings continue, even though President Trump has said he will not cooperate. Coming up, this week's latest round of indictments. And the latest on the ongoing escalation of violence in Turkey and how all of this came to be. As President Trump tries to defend himself against an impeachment inquiry by putting up a stone wall, House Democrats are furiously trying to break it down. They're threatening to issue a wave of subpoenas for individuals who may know about Trump's dealings with Ukraine in response to the White House refusal to cooperate with their impeachment inquiry. Among them, former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. She testified on Capitol Hill behind closed doors on Friday. Targets Energy Secretary and former Texas Governor Rick Perry. He announced that he was going to retire at the end of the year. A letter sent to Perry states his role in the controversy is raising questions. That letter states the House wants to know if Perry played a part in, quote, conveying or reinforcing the president's message. Perry has met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at least 3 times while in office. Last week, Perry said that he has asked President Trump to call Zelensky several times, but it was about energy policies, not about the Bidens. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said President Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president was, quote, wholly appropriate. He says his department is taking guidance from the White House moving forward.
I think the White House has made very clear we will ensure that we do everything we're required to do by the law and the Constitution, every time.
Many of the president's allies still falling in line this week.
Rocket docket impeachment. That's what they're trying to go for. This whole thing stinks.
We're seeing the entire House Democratic Conference eagerly ripping the country in half right now.
President Trump is opening the door to cooperating with the impeachment inquiry, but there is a catch.
It depends. If they vote and say you can't have lawyers, you can't ask questions, you can't have anybody present, all of these crazy things, it really is an unfair situation.
Democrats are arguing that the process is all part of their oversight duties over the executive branch. The House committees are expected to talk to President Trump's former Russia advisor tomorrow. On Thursday, 2 Ukrainian associates of President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, they were in a Virginia court, caught on the way out of the country. Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman were helping Giuliani look into debunked allegations against Joe and Hunter Biden. The men were arrested at Dulles International Airport trying to board an international flight to Germany. They each had one-way tickets. Prosecutors were concerned the men may flee. A judge ordered them held until they secure a $1 million bond each. They're charged in the Southern District of New York and will be extradited there eventually. The case against them centers around violations of campaign finance laws. An indictment accuses them of funneling foreign money into U.S. elections, specifically into a pro-Trump super PAC, I should say. 2 other men also indicted on Thursday. They are all facing 2 counts of conspiracy, 1 count of false statements to the Federal Election Commission, and 1 count of falsification of records. 1 man was arrested in California. The 4th suspect remains at large. The American public seems to be getting behind the impeachment inquiry. A new survey conducted by the Washington Post and George Mason University shows 58% of Americans are in favor of the investigation. That's more than 20 points higher than in July. At that point, the Mueller report had been published, but the whistleblower report had not yet been made public. 86% of Democrats support the inquiry, 57% of independent voters, and almost 3 in 10 Republicans are also on board. Almost half of the respondents say they hope the House votes to remove Trump from office. The Turkish military is pushing forward with its operation in Syria at the time of this recording, on Friday anyway. They are striking at the Kurds who are positioned in the northeastern part of that country. And those same Kurdish fighters have been fighting alongside the United States against ISIS. We haven't lost any troops there. They have. President Donald Trump apparently gave the Turkish president permission last week. The president's approval of the military move is forcing even his most loyal allies to push back. Senator Lindsey Graham took to Twitter to release a bipartisan resolution to enforce severe sanctions against Turkey. On the day of the military move, he tweeted that it was a, quote, disaster in the making. Pray for our Kurdish allies who have been shamelessly abandoned by the Trump administration. This move ensures the reemergence of ISIS, end quote. The president's former national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, argues a U.S. presence is necessary in the region to counter ISIS.
I know it feels good to some people to think, well, let's just disengage from that and worry about ourselves. But of course, if we did that, we would become very vulnerable.
But the president says he's following through on a campaign promise.
Getting out of the endless wars, have to do it. And eventually somebody was going to have to make the decision.
Now thousands fleeing their homes. Humanitarian groups estimate around 300,000 people could become displaced because of this. We were all reminded to be kind this week after TV host Ellen DeGeneres and former President George W. Bush took in a Cowboys game last week. Coming up, one man who didn't get the memo. So things like this happen, and then I forget about it, and then Ellen DeGeneres tells us all to be kind to each other because she's kind to the former president, and then we all share that video on Facebook, and we're all fired up about it, and we post it with like this, period. Like it's the answer to all the world's problems. And then the president has a rally, and we all forget about that, and we can't even recognize the kindness that we have experienced, not even just online, but in real life, and act accordingly. So here's something that happened this week. Veteran NBC News correspondent Kelly O'Donnell covering a rally that President Trump put on in Minneapolis. So at these rallies, all the media are corralled into the same risers/pen that's sort of in the middle of everything. So a little while into the rally, she tweeted this, which you're reading there. Man at rally brings toddler boy over to the media area and tells him to put his thumb down and say bad media. Which, okay, fine. But then this happened. Mara Barrett, who's another reporter/campaign embed for NBC News, tweeted this in response to O'Donnell. This is the same man and toddler boy who happily chatted with us and with whom we shared our snacks just prior to the start of the rally. Then he reminded his son to say thank you. So yeah, kindness, right? O'Donnell won a Career Achievement Award this week, by the way, from Radio Television Correspondent Association Capitol Hill Bureau for her distinguished career in covering Congress. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, also on Twitter, Jackie Kingston, plus the #1 there. Stay up with all the latest political news with us this week on myhighplains.com. Maybe be kinder to each other. Have a great day. See you next week.